Want to go ahead and introduce our featured speaker today, though, Joey Donovan Guido. Joey is the owner of Cuppa SEO Web Design and the author of the book, A Holistic Guide to Online Marketing. In addition to running his web design firm, he offers consulting services and engaging presentations based on the principles found in his book. Joey is an expert on the areas of web design, SEO, user experience, and website conversion, which he will be sharing a little bit about today. Without further ado, though, I'm going to kick it over to Joey. Joey, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thanks very much, Andy. And thank you all for joining us today. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about user experience, and this might be a term that's familiar to some and maybe a little bit new to others. So we're going to start off with a definition of what is user experience. And my brief definition of user experience is that it's either the positive, negative, or neutral experience somebody has on your website, your blog, your social media. And this digital user experience also carries into the analog world, right? So whether we're getting a haircut, going to the doctor, the dentist, I always like to joke about going to Target in the middle of a pandemic with a mask on and foggy glasses, not the best user experience, right? So pretty interesting when we start looking at everything as how's my user experience, all right? And when someone gets to your website, we obviously want that user experience to be as positive as possible. And today I'm going to share 5 proven methodologies with you to help you do that. Okay. And the first one is navigation do's and don'ts. And one side note, if you guys are practicing anything that I am calling out as non-optimal, that's okay. Don't be harsh with yourself. Just start to look at your website and start to implement the changes as quickly as possible. A lot of what you're going to see today is pervasive online. So it's pretty common problems. But the good news is that they're easily fixable. So first is an example of a really good navigation. This is Dollar Shave Club. And myself and my user experience friends love to use this as an example. This is an older version of their homepage. But just take a look at this navigation. It's so clean and clear and easy to digest. You've got our blades, our products, gift, how it works, reviews, account, and really the only thing in this navigation that's a little bit ambiguous is this box button at the end. And once you're a member, it's obvious that's your box of when you are receiving your shipment each month or each however many weeks. But that's something that's a little bit unclear. The other thing, which is the only misstep that got added to this website, which kind of took us a little bit further away from that perfect navigational user experience, is this little sandwich nav, which you would expect to see on a mobile site, right? But for some reason, Dollar Shave Club decided to put it on the desktop site, which is what we're looking at right now. And when it expands, you get essentially pretty much everything that is in the main navigation. A couple of these things are named slightly differently. So like gift the club, here it says gift the club, that's fine. But club reviews in the side nav says reviews up here. So there's little discrepancies that might cause you to say, as a viewer, to say, huh? Why is this here and why is it different? What am I supposed to do with it? Again, all of this content is the same, except for the bottom piece that says original content, which is their blog, which again, does original content convey where that viewer is going in the most clear way? And I think the obvious answer is no. To say it's a blog is much more clear, much more going to meet the expectation of the viewer on the website. Now, here's the thing. Innately, there's nothing wrong with this side nav. It just has no place on the desktop. It's not necessary, right? You've got to choose one or the other, but to have 2 navigations is kind of like going out for dinner and the waiter hands you 2 menus. and says, I'll be back in a few minutes to take your order. And you're sitting there like, why are there two? This is their mobile navigation, which of course expands from a sandwich nav, and it works totally fine here. The UX is very good for mobile. Now, sometimes what you're going to find is that if you have a website that's more than like 4 to 8 pages, which many of us do, you might need something a little bit more robust than just top level navigation, right? Of course, Dollar Shave Club has what's called a drop-down menu. And I kind of want to show you what that looks like. So if we go back to our slides. Oops, sorry, I went too fast, but I will show you the drop-down menu. This is if you've got maybe a dozen, 2 dozen or more pages, and you want to have something that's really organized and easy to digest. You have what's called a drop-down menu, which you can see here on my cupseo.com website. Something important to note here is that with the drop-down, you guys have probably seen sometimes you can have what's called a flyout as well, right? So if I were to hover over SEO here, you would get another flyout menu on the side. For user experience purposes, we generally recommend to not use a flyout menu unless you have a really good reason. And sometimes there is a really good reason. All right, so this is not saying never use it. Some of the problems with the flyout menu, one is they can be wonky, right? So you're hovering over this and you go to hover over the flyout and it disappears and it just can be weird. So you've got to work with your developer to make sure that it's a really well-built flyout menu. Okay, we're going to stop talking about drop downs for a moment because what I want to show you is something that takes the user experience of the main navigation way off the grid, really into the realm of a really bad user experience. And that's what I'm going to show you right here. This I have blurred out the name of this website, this organization, but you'll probably figure out who they are as we move through this. This website homepage literally has 5 navigations. And we're going to go through each one and talk about why it's a misstep. But first, think about going back to that menu example, going to a restaurant. Now imagine your waitress walks up to you, greets you, introduces herself, and says, all right, listen, here's menu number 1, menu number 2, menu number 3, and so on, and hands you 5 menus. And you're sitting there just like, whoa, what do I do? This is not a good user experience. This is not clear. This is not concise. This is not easily digestible, right? You've just been handed a stack of menus. And on this website, that's exactly what's happening. So let's walk through it just a little bit. Right here, we've got our main navigation, which is marked with number 1. Okay, that's fine. It's in a little bit of an odd spot because it's kind of low on the page for a navigation, as you can see, because there are other elements going on here taking up that prime real estate. So we've got main navigation. The second navigation is kind of like almost like a sub navigation, which is right here about the ADA, contact, join, renew, and login. This is something that could be wrapped into this main navigation if we did a little work on it with the organization. But right now it's kind of divesting our attention to which is more important of these two, right? Then we've got a third navigational area here, which is more ADA websites, which I guess you might want to go to depending on who you are and if you're working at a dental office or not. You've got a search box, you've got a way to increase the font size, and then you've got social media, which will literally take you completely away from the website. This is just a side note. Other than it being a bad UX to bring somebody away from your website, it's bad for business. Because as soon as somebody goes to Facebook or Twitter, they're going to see, oh, wow, I got 5 messages. Look at this. Oh, such and such posted. And all of a sudden, your website is lost in the dust. And the really sad point is that you sent them there. right? So we never want to send people from our website to social media. Our fourth area of navigation is this ad for Advil. Now, some people have said, yeah, Joey, that's not navigation. And you know what? You're right, it's not navigation, but this is living in the prime area of where the navigation should be. So we've got to look at it as a navigational element. This is like the boardwalk in Monopoly. Okay, this is like the most expensive prime real estate, and they're using it for Advil, for an ad. So if you're seeing things like this on your website, you want to start to think about, how can I pare it down into preferably one main navigation? But we're not quite done yet. We do have one more navigational element, and it's a sub-nav down here. It's a tabbed sub-nav. So as you click on these elements like ADA News and JADA and events, it will open up a small box below it. That's a fifth navigational element. So now the user is being asked to digest 5 separate elements of navigation. It's like a maze. And that makes the user think way too hard about how to get to what they need. There's a user experience mantra, which is, don't make me think. We don't want to dumb things down. We don't want to treat our users as if they're uneducated or unintelligent. What we want to do is acknowledge that everybody's overwhelmed, everybody's busy. By the way, it's a pandemic, right? So we want to make it as easy and clear and digestible as possible. That's the goal of a good user experience. So we talked about this drop-down navigation because, you know, we're looking here at a lot of elements. There's a lot of things calling out our attention. And for a navigation, we've got to figure out a way to present this in a way that it makes sense and where everything important is easily accessible, right? So we talked about drop-down menu for a site that's a little larger than a small site of 5 or 6 or 8 pages. But what if you have hundreds or thousands of pages? How do you deal with that type of a navigation? And if you've got a business like that, it's probably retail-based business. Let's take a look. Right here, we've got Williams-Sonoma, and they have what's called a mega nav. And it's done pretty well, and that's why I'm using it as an example. You've got your main categories right here. And in this case, I clicked on Cook's Tools, and this mega nav drops down and very clearly shows us what our options are. We've got all cap bold headlines, right? And then below that, we've got what lives underneath those headlines. So if I'm looking for a specialty tool, a cook's tool, oh yeah, and I need some tools for to kind of mince and work on my garlic and herbs, right? So I can go right to that. This is a wonderful example of how to organize a lot of information in a very succinct and digestible way. Another nice note here is how they're using their imagery to kind of ground us when we go to this particular tab. And the imagery can do a really good job of kind of letting us know that, hey, you've landed in the right spot, and it can also engage visually and add a little bit of respite from all these words, right? You've got something graphical on the page. The issue with this particular image is it's the wrong image. It's the tabletop and bar image, which they mistakenly put on the Cook's Tools drop down or mega nav. They fixed this after I took the screenshot, but I left it incorrect because I think it's a good example of just looking at those details. Is the image making sense with what we're telling somebody this particular tab is about? If we drop into mobile, this company really does a good job of keeping that continuity, keeping that clarity, that digestibility in place. So here on your left, you'll see We've got the main categories again, right? Cookware, cook's tools, cutlery, and so on. And then on your right, I expanded cook's tools. And there are a few really nice elements that are going on here. One is you wind up with an expanded or an accordion drop down that includes all those same elements that you had here, right? All of those major bolded all cap headlines. And each of these is expandable. If you click on this little triangle, it will expand and give you more details for kitchen gadgets or whatever. So look how nicely they have taken a plethora of products and presented them to us in a way that makes us say, oh, okay, this is easy. I can figure out what to do next. And figuring out what to do next bleeds into the methodology of something called conversion, which is making it easy, preferably easy, for someone to take that next step, to contact us, to call us, fill out a form, or in this case, to place something in their cart to make a purchase. And guys, I can't remember if Andy mentioned, but if you guys have any questions at all, please drop them as the chat as we go through the workshop. And then when we're all done, we're going to go ahead and address all of your questions in a Q&A format. So thus far, we've just looked at navigation. And the funny thing is we could talk about that for the rest of the workshop and still not be done. But this is giving you a really good high-level idea of what a good navigation looks like. And it's important because when someone shows up on your site, a good user experience helps somebody feel comfortable, at ease, really well-grounded. Do you ever walk into a store? The Apple Store is a good example. You know, you look on one side and you've got all of your mobile devices. You look on the other side, you've got all your computers. You walk toward the back and you've got all your accessories and speakers and stuff like that. And it's really easy to get the lay of the land as soon as you walk into that store. And it's the same with your website. You want people to get that same kind of grounded feeling like they would in a brick and mortar store. Yes, it's digital, but so what? We're still human beings and we still live in an analog world. So next up, we're going to talk about homepage and subpage layouts or hierarchy. And we're also going to bring in calls to action into this conversation, because what I found over the years is that user experience and conversion they're married to each other. There's really no way to separate them effectively without one suffering. They're connected, they're entwined, and that's okay. We just need to know that. So when we're working on our user experience or our conversion, we're asking questions like, is this working well together? Okay. So we're going to go back to Dollar Shave Club and look at their desktop homepage for their layout or their page hierarchy. Now, of course, we've already talked about their navigation. So we're going to go kind of do a little story here. Go back to this marriage methodology or this marriage topic, right, that we just talked about. And what I like to talk about here to explain why this is such a good user experience is the introduction versus the first date analogy. Okay. When someone gets to your website, the last thing you want to do is ask them, hey, let's get married. Or in other words, hey, come buy this $25,000 product. No questions asked, right? If it's, let's say it's Subaru. We want to make sure that we are making an introduction if it's needed. And we're making room for what I call that first date. So let me explain. When we get to this page, if I'm coming here and I already know Dollar Shave Club and I'm kind of ready to take the next step, I'm going to pay attention to this part, which has tons of benefits. Let's count how many benefits. A great shave for a few bucks a month, no commitment, no fees, no BS. In very few words, they've given me 5 great benefits that are going to make me want to buy this product. If I fit into that first date category, I'm ready to go out for dinner. I'm going to click do it and I'm going to make a purchase. Okay. But what if I just did a Google search and found them and never heard of them before? And I get there, I need that introduction before I get asked out on that first date. And that's what this video here is for, to let the viewer know who is Dollar Shave Club? What are more of the benefits of using our products? What's kind of our mantra or our company branding? Are we a good fit for each other? So this site is kind of like, hi, my name is Joey. I run my own business. I've got 2 kids and a wonderful wife, right? Just getting to know me a little bit without overwhelming somebody. This is a Dollar Shave Club subpage, and it basically does the same thing. It visually engages with you. It shows you, in this case, the blades that are for sale. And it shows you in a really nice hierarchy. We've got an image that shows you the blade. We've got a name. We've got a price. We've got a brief description here, right, for each one. And we also have a call to action button that allows us to select any or all of these products. And the great thing about this, the wonderful user experience, is the simplicity and the fact that I do not need to scroll in order to get the information I need. Yes, there is more information below there. And that's for people who really want to do their due diligence and read about more of the product benefits, maybe how it's constructed, what the materials are, and so on. Okay. So that's Subpage. But let's say you don't sell products. Let's say you're more like Cup SEO and you sell services. Let's take a look at something different and see what that looks like. This is the Cup SEO homepage. And again, you'll see there's a lot of simplicity here. We've got a single navigation, very little words on the page, web design done right. This headline is meant to be an emotional tug for business owners and organizations that have had a website built wrong. That the SEO is bad, the UX is bad, the conversion methodology might be clunky or awkward. They're kind of licking their wounds, feeling like they spent a lot of money on something that's not really making them any money. And this is also paid off in the little bit of copy I have here. Get found, that's SEO. Build trust, that's user experience. And grow with holistic web design and SEO services. And we've got 2 options here. What's my interest, web design or SEO? I click on that. It takes me to the appropriate page. I don't have to think about it. Same deal with the Cup SEO subpage. You're going to notice here, this is a lot more minimalist than what we saw on Dollar Shave Club. Both solutions are okay, depending on your brand and what you do and who your clients are or your customers. You've got to figure that out for yourself. Is it going to be more visually engaging, or are we just going to have a hero image at the top of the page that pulls the viewer in? In this case, I take a minimalist approach on cupseo.com. And one of the things I'm doing for a hierarchy here is I always lead at the top with my hero image and then H1 headline. That's this headline right here. And below that, before we need to scroll, I answer 3 major questions. What is it? What does it do? How does it help me? How does it help me is, of course, benefit driven. I want that viewer, when they get to the web page, to not have to scroll before they know exactly what this product or service does. And hey, by the way, if it sounds good, go ahead and click on the call to action button. That is intentionally above the scroll line. And I'm on a 13-inch Mac, so I'm on a pretty small computer. So I've got everything packaged at the top of this that somebody might need in order to make a decision of whether they or not they want to use us to create their website. Now, similar to the Dollar Shave Club example, if somebody wants more information, no problem. There you go. Once we get below the scroll line or below that call to action we saw, we have very specific headlines that talk about different parts of the process, from how it's a custom website, how you get the SEO, how you get the user experience conversion. So if somebody comes here and they're like, wow, gee, we know Joey from Madison. We know he does really good SEO, but what's this user experience? What's this conversion stuff? I can get more information really easily because the hierarchy of the content is so clearly set up and digestible. So remember, if you've got questions about any of this, drop it in the chat and we're going to address it pretty soon. So that's our basic overview of homepage and subpage hierarchy. You're going to want to follow a similar process on your mobile pages. We just don't have time today to look through all those in detail. But something else I wanted to mention that is super important is avoiding noise. All right, so let's take a look at 2 examples of noise. This one is from an actual live website. I believe they've redesigned it since then. I have no idea if they've heard me talk about them or not, and that's why. You never know. But this is a website for an electronics website. Okay, and you can see they sell a lot of stuff. And oh my gosh, when you get here, this is their homepage. What am I supposed to look at first? Is it the stock take sale? Is it the appliances? Is it free music, ebooks, factory scoop? Looks like they sell guitars. Oh, by the way, they've got all these little buttons up here, which again, distraction, noise. And then this is their navigation. Okay. And their navigation necessarily in it of itself is not too bad. It's fairly organized. The buttons are segregated, or the tabs are segregated. But when we get here visually, we are overwhelmed. It's kind of like having the stereo on, having one kid playing Nintendo, the other kid is crying because they need their diaper changed. Your spouse is cooking dinner and they just burn themselves. The doorbell's ringing, the television's on, and you're like, holy cow. Way too much noise. So if you've got a website that looks like this, take a look at it and see if you can create a hierarchy that makes more sense. Talk to your web developer and see if they can help you. We're always here to help, and we have good solutions for this. Also, Andy had mentioned earlier, I've got a book that goes way deep into all these topics. So if you don't have a budget to get the help, you can get the book and do it yourself until you do have a budget. Many years ago, I worked for the Public Relations Society of America at their home office down by Wall Street in New York. And they had a website that literally had hundreds of text links of all things. And it was something that the board of directors, they wanted all that information on one page. And they argued with us about it. And being the board, we couldn't do anything without their approval. So we lived with a ridiculously complex website homepage that everybody got confused about. And my last noise example is actually from a live website, which is pretty nicely designed. It's this NOMA website. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because there's been a movement, and it's not new, it's been around for quite a few years now. There's been a movement toward motion on websites. And motion is proven to lower the user experience. It's also proven to get in the way of conversion. And it's something that designers and developers get excited about, right? Because it's visually stimulating, at least they think it is. And it's something interesting to put on the page. But here's the thing. It's a distraction. It gets in the way of the message. It gets in the way of having your website visitor take the next step and convert, whether that's getting in touch or making a purchase. Let me show you what I mean. This website, let's refresh it. First, you'll notice the headline kind of fades in. Okay, not a big deal, but why? Second thing, if we scroll down on the page, you see the content in the headline kind of lifts in. Again, why? This movement, you know, it's supposed to add pizzazz, but as we start to go, it just starts to become a distraction to the eye. Right? And this goes on and on, over and over. And what you'll also see is there's a flipping of imagery and content, right? So we've got image on the left, and we've got image on the right, image on the left. And that's not necessarily bad if you design it well and make sure it's clear and easy to digest. You know, if we come back to the top of this page and we look and we see now everything's static. Once it moves, when we look at it again, it doesn't move again. It stays static. And look how much easier that is. I'm scrolling down, my eye's not getting distracted by movement. And I can just start to see, okay, this is for unique spaces and luxury escapes. Wow, that's kind of cool. Let me look into that. It takes one layer of understanding out of the equation and makes things a little bit more digestible. And with that, the only thing I want to share with you before we go to Q&A is just how you guys can connect with me if you want to get in touch. And you've got a few ways. If you want to talk about web design or SEO, you can go to cuppaseo.com. If it's about speaking, consulting, or the book, you can go to joeydonovanguido.com. And Andy, one thing that's changed since our last workshop is I now have a podcast, which can be listened to on either of my websites, or you can go to any of the major podcast applications and see it there. And it's called Getting Under the Surface. The acronym is GUTS. And I can tell you more about that if you guys like as well. But with that, Andy, I'm going to turn it back over to you and see what kind of questions we've got.
Thanks so much, Joey. We have one question right now, so I'll give it a few more moments here for people to go ahead and type. Go ahead and use the raise your hand function too, or pop on screen. But before we go ahead and hop into questions, one thing I thought that might be helpful for you folks here too is Joey actually spoke in January on behalf of DreamBank, speaking on 6 ways to improve the SEO of your website. It's on our YouTube page, which in case you had missed anything today or wanted to go back and revisit Joey's presentation, you can do so. I put the link in the chat there, but I'm going to go ahead and put a direct link to Joey's previous event in January. He is slotted to have 2 more events, one in March and one in April, all through the lens of web development. Yeah, the first question came from Brittany. So what are some questions we can ask ourselves to figure out what is best for our audience as far as display and design?
Okay, that's a really good question. That could be a whole workshop on its own. But Brittany, the short answer is really the first thing we need to do is understand who our customers or our clients are. And sometimes that's hard when you're a new brand or you're offering a new service or product. So really, you know, what I like to request of my clients to get to know who their clients are is to say, just talk to your clients, talk to your customers, ask them what brought them to you, ask them what they look for in a vendor. Let's say you're selling, I don't know, headphones, right? Or cutlery or whatever. What are they looking for in a product? So getting that customer feedback is really good, a really good way to kind of sharpen what it is. I'll be honest, like for us at Cuppa SEO, it's really hard because sometimes we have sole proprietors come to us who are just getting started, who have a $5,000 budget and that's it. And then sometimes we've got multi-million or billion-dollar clients like Wyden or Promega coming to us who have such budgets that what they spend on us, they don't even notice. And so my client base is really broad. And over the years, one of the things I've been considering and not pull the trigger on is like, really, do I want to sharpen that and really choose who my customer is? And that's another thing you can do is just decide, okay, this is what I want my customer base to be. And what do they like? Let's just say it's like jewelry, high-end jewelry. That's what you're selling. You know, what are their attributes? Well, they're going to have expendable cash. They might be a little bit older, right, to have accrued that cash or be high enough level in their careers where they're making more income. I'm probably going to want them to be local unless I have an online store. So what can I do to further define that client? I can look at my competition, the other people in the area who are selling similar priced products, and look at how are they talking to their website visitors and their clients. I hope I'm answering this. It's kind of a difficult question to answer quickly.
That did help. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And just kind of one piggyback on that is really, you got to try stuff and see what gets a good reaction. And sometimes the best way to do that is, even if you only have a handful of customers as a brand new business, is to ask the customer, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Which do you like better? Because one of the things that is going to help, regardless of the type of business or product or service, is thinking about how am I going to engage with people emotionally, and a lot of times unconsciously. On my website, I've very, seriously thought about what are the colors that are going to make people feel like they're in a warm, comfortable environment. That cup of SEO cup on the homepage is an actual photo of a cup that my photographer took because, hey, lots of people like coffee. Now, all of a sudden, this is all like the different psychological things we look at when we're building a page and a website. If I can make people feel like, hey, I'm going to be dealing with an actual human being named Joey when I get my website built, not some, machine or some cold, computerized feeling website. When I get there, I just feel like, uncomfortable. These are all really little things that can add up to somebody wanting to buy from you, wanting to develop a relationship from you. And the final thing I'll say is when you're thinking about connecting with your customer, for a moment, forget about what you're selling, forget about the price, and answer the one question: how can I connect with them best to develop a relationship through my website? Because if you can develop that relationship and connect with them as human beings, everything else kind of falls into place and answers itself.
Next question we have here, Joey. Some praise. Thank you so much, Joey. This was super insightful. How do you determine how effective a navigation bar or homepage is? How can we tell if there can be further improvements upon them?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So I guess the quick answer is there are a few easy things you can do. One thing is, if you've got a WordPress website, you should find multiple free or low-cost opportunities to add what I'm calling like hot zones, right? You can review the hot zones of your website pages to see what users are doing when they go there. So this is a pretty baseline user experience methodology that we use to see, hey, what works, what doesn't. Sometimes we might split test, right? And still have this overlay of usability or hot zones to see what people are doing in the split test. So for instance, half the split test might be the current navigation. You see, it's kind of hard with navigation because you can't really mess around with the navigation too much in a split test. That's something that goes deeper. You'd have to work with your web developer to kind of create potentially 2 home pages. But back to the easy way is set up those hot zones and see what people are doing, how they're behaving. You can look on the back end, again, if you're on WordPress, and see what people are clicking on and where they're going also without that hot zone. And something that's super easy to track without even going into Google Analytics is looking and seeing how many people are converting. So if you've got a retail shop on your website, like in this case, let's say we were going to implement things now and then look in April and see what happened in March and the rest of February. You can look back, I would say look back a year, right? Try and do an apples to apples comparison as to like what happened last February, what happened last March, because of course, seasonally things change with sales. And look and see, did the new navigational hierarchy yield more conversion? Did it yield more sales? If you're not selling products, did it yield more people clicking on the contact button? Because even from that navigation, maybe somebody got to the web design page more easily. And because of that, you have 10 more clicks that go from the web design page to the contact page. And then of course you have potentially 10 more people filling out the form. And I like to do more like old school basic tracking because it can be a real time suck to get into real high analytics. It is an option. If you like that kind of stuff, you can go into Google Analytics and see exactly what's going on, but it takes some time to kind of digest how to use Google Analytics. So I try to keep my clients on the editor side or the back end of the WordPress site. You can set up something called Site Stats, which is free. It's part of the Jetpack plugin. Most of Jetpack you're going to want to turn off because it bloats your website and slows it down. But Site Stats is nice because it gives you an idea of how many people came to the website just through SEO. where they came from, and what pages they went to. And if they clicked on something on one of those pages, it tells you what they clicked on and where they went. So you can start to easily track in a few minutes a day what's going on. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what you do is you look and you see, oh, wow, okay, previous to this change in the navigation, 10 people a month were clicking on whatever, and now it's 30 or 40. If it's still at 10, then you've got to ask a question, okay, do I have enough data? Do I need to work and get on more people to the website to get a better baseline of if this is working or not? There's a lot of other nuanced things that go on. But really, I like to go to that, and if you want to know easily, are more people filling out a form? Set up a trigger that pops up a thank you page, right? So every time someone fills out a form on Cuppa SEO, they get a little, hey, thanks for getting in touch. It's a nice coffee cup image. It says, we'll be in touch soon. Have a good day, something like that. But what's nice about the trigger page is, one, the user knows that their form got sent, right? So they don't have to worry about it. But just looking at your site stats or what pages were being viewed, oh, my thank you page triggered 12 times today. Cool, 12 people filled out my form. And just like that, if it's better than last year or not. I hope that it makes sense.
Thanks so much for that, Joey. That was a great explanation you had to that question there. It looks like that's all the questions that have come in at this time. We still have some time left. Go ahead and get those questions in if you have anything left for Joey. But before we wrap up, I want to do something fun today to see how well some of you were paying attention to Joey's presentation today. So Joey mentioned a book that he offered. Joey, I don't know if you have that book. If you could hold it up just for the guests to see here again today. A Holistic Guide to Online Marketing. We got some of those books that we're going to be giving away. We're going to be giving away 2 of those books today. I'm actually going to be going over and meeting Joey as soon as this event is done, grabbing them. I know from the first session, there's a couple folks that are waiting for those books who had won. But Joey mentioned a Williams-Sonoma webpage. There was a certain style of menu that Joey had referenced when talking about the Williams-Sonoma webpage. First 2 people to go ahead and type the name of that menu that Joey had mentioned will be getting 2 books. All right, that was really, really quick. Okay, we have two winners. So El Janisco and Melissa, I will go ahead and follow up with the email address that you used to register today, just to get a good mailing address from you. I will do that after the event, though. Thank you so much for that, though. And again, if there's any more questions, please go ahead and get them in. Before we go ahead and wrap up, though, Joey, we always like to ask our speakers, just because we are a community of fellow dreamers, what is one piece of advice you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream right now?
I love that question. And that's something I think about for myself and my kids and my wife every day. I think my thoughts on that are, 1, be kind to yourself. I think it's really easy to be on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn and see these people like Gary Vaynerchuk or in my people that I follow, or Seth Godin, who are these huge marketing professionals that like everybody knows. And it's easy to look at them and feel like really small, or feel like maybe, if I were better, if I were good enough, I'd be more successful like them. And what we don't see is that someone like Seth Godin has been doing this for decades, right? It's almost like that half-hour sitcom where we start off with the kernel of a problem, and 22 minutes later, not including commercials, the problem is solved. And that's not real life. That's actually what Guts, my podcast, talks a lot about, is self-care, is how we perceive ourselves and the business situations we're in, the expectations we have. And I find myself quite often having unrealistic expectations of myself. Like, I want to go from here to here in 2 steps, when really it's 20 or 30 steps, right? And that gets me feeling frustrated because I want to be here. So be kind to yourself. And really, if you can chunk it down, whatever your dream is, into manageable steps, and just look at, what is my next step to get there? What do I need to do to be able to do that next step? And then try that. And we could talk more about goals and all that stuff, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you for that, Joey. Very, very sound advice there. It looks like that's all the questions that have come in. So we will go ahead and wrap it up there. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day, joining us here. We very much appreciate it. Again, there's links in the chat for Joey's his first presentation back in January, in addition to DreamBank's YouTube page, which has tons of our previous content uploaded for you folks to go ahead and comb through. So again, with that being said, we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up there, and we will see you all next time. Take care.